Welcome back to Under Oath. Today we have writer, producer, and actor Adam Nimoy. Adam, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Jeff.
You have, whether you like it or not, you do have the IMDb page. So, I know the other stuff is more important, but we don't forget about your big Emmy-winning performance on The Big Bang.
Well, that's a one-time walk-on. I wouldn't consider myself an actor, Jeff, but I appreciate it. I enjoyed the experience on that show.
Now, I did watch your documentary about your father a couple years ago, and it stuck with me. And I watch a lot of documentaries, but this one, it was tough because as a son, you're creating that documentary and you're putting this out there. How tough was it for you to do and to convince your father to be part of?
Well, he didn't take any need to convince. He was in the minute I suggested the idea. I mean, the documentary really I conceived of as a way to celebrate 50 years of Star Trek. We were coming up on the 50th anniversary at that point. This was in 2014. And I just thought it would be a great way for us to collaborate. We had made a short documentary film about his life in Boston, entitled Leonard Nimoy's Boston, appropriately. And we, it was such a great bonding experience, and we had so much fun doing that. I thought we should just collaborate again on the Spock doc. And he was doing all the research on it. He was like Googling Spock's ears and stuff, and he got a kick out of all the, the hundreds of thousands of references to Spock's ears. And he was really in on it. This is going to be a really good project for us. But then suddenly in February of 2015, my dad passed away. And so I just felt like I needed to continue on with the project.
I'm a junior, so my dad was larger than life, not like internationally larger than life, but in the city I lived in, I would say my name and they go, oh, there's another Jeff Kaufman. And it was always so difficult for me. And I had to move away. I had to go try to find my own identity and hunt this down. You can't move away.
You can run, but you can't hide. Spock is everywhere.
I mean, I can't imagine you went to law school. You go, okay, now I'm a lawyer. I'm going to be a producer. I'm going to be all these other things. There has to be a time, and I suffered this too, where I was going, listen, I'm my own person. I know my father was this person, but I'm also this person. What advice would you give to somebody who's been in a situation like yours to go, okay, to become your own person, to be able to figure out whether to accept this or hide from it or run from it, or is it just personal choice?
Well, I mean, it's different in every situation. In my case, I was really following my dad's credo by trying to find something I felt passionate about. I really wanted to go to college and go into law school and pursue a legal career. I just thought that made sense for me. I also was, I was motivated by the fact that it was something that Leonard Nimoy could not and did not do, because my dad could do anything. So there was, I was trying to create my own identity by going in that route. But, the weird thing was that after 7 years of practicing law, it became pretty clear to me that I wasn't passionate about it. That's my dad's whole watchword is you got to feel the passion about what you do. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time. And I really felt that. I was just, in a slump. And it came to the point where I just wanted to do what my dad did, which was storytelling, which was why I transitioned into directing. I was, with his help, I was lucky. I had the expertise that he had that I tapped into. He helped educate me and gave me some connections. I started observing on Star Trek: The Next Generation about what directing was all about. I was lucky I had my wife, the artist, graphic designer, illustrator, who was making a living for us, and I had the luxury of being able to transition. So, yes, it started off where I just wanted to do anything that my dad could not do, but then in the end, I just wanted to be like him in some small way, and I really felt that, and I still feel it now. Storytelling was really something that I felt very passionate about and felt good about, even though I was never going to be able to equal him or challenge him or compete with him. That was never a part of the equation.
What I love about this is when I found out I was getting an opportunity to interview you, and I got it. It was funny because I got to interview Shatner last week, it was so funny. And I'm going, that this would come up a week later. What hit me the most is that I write comic books too.
Recording stopped.
And I wrote this comic book concerning my about a father and son, and didn't realize it was all about my father. And I wrote it by accident, and the emotional effect it had on me. And now you just wrote, you have your book, The Most Human, about your dad. When you finished it, were you like going, God, I didn't believe I did that? Or did you know all the way through these are the feelings you had?
Well, look, Jeff, I've been a writer all my life. I'm just not well published. So I love the craft of writing. Whether or not the decision to write the book was the initial threshold. I wasn't sure I wanted to share all that information. But the fact is, I'm in recovery, and I've been in recovery for 21 years, and I go to meetings and I share a lot of this stuff anonymously. Not, people don't know I'm related to Leonard Nimoy, and that the dynamics of our relationship are about me and Mr. Spock. They don't know. They don't need to know. The book is a celebration about the fact that even though we had trouble in our relationship, through recovery, we were able to reconnect with one another. That is my experience strengthened up. I was sharing that, and it was resonating with people. So and I talked a little bit about that in the documentary, a little bit about the problems in our relationship and how we managed to reconcile with one another. Well, I just felt like, I should just do the deep dive and really get into the details of how it all worked for us, hoping that it might resonate with other people who are picking up the book. So, that's how the decision was made, to really just go out there with it. The issue is, how much do you tell about these difficulties? Because it's not a tell-all. It's not mommy dearest. I'm not going through a laundry list of my issues with my dad. I have to be very careful. And for that, I had to hire an editor to tell me, this is enough. You don't need this, or you need to explore more in this area than what I had there already.
Now, that's a hard thing, because this is a secondary body coming in and telling you, hey, listen, I don't think this is important. And I've had to fight with editors too, going, no, this is important. I think this was important to me, and I think it's important to people in recovery, and I think it's important there. Were there any fights over it, or was it pretty easy to go, okay, we'll take that out?
Recording in progress.
No, there were, look, I was working with a woman who had been in the publishing industry for many years, a very good editor, and I deferred to her quite a bit. There were some things, stylistic things she would ask for that I might talk to her about, I might quibble about, but I really needed the strong-handed guidance, because the fact of the matter is, she was very good at what she did, which was to stay on point, stay on theme. And when you really have a clear idea of what the message is, it becomes much more obvious about what we needed to discard, what we did not need to tell the story, and where we should expand on. I deferred to her quite a bit. This is a woman, by the way, who knew nothing about Star Trek. She was perfect. When she told me that, perfect, you're hired. And she was willing to help me, because I wanted. Sometimes we're too deep into the weeds, and we don't see the forest from the trees. We can't zoom out, and we need help doing that. And I was, more often than not, I would just defer to her because I knew she was right, and I wanted to make sure that I was not going overboard in one direction or another. It's a fine line we're walking here.
What I love about this whole thing is it's about fathers and sons. It's about how we feel about it. When our father passes, we suddenly become, there's nobody to get advice from anymore. You can't look up, you can't pick up that phone call. And I can't tell you how many times that, since my own dad passed, that I go, God, I go for the phone and I go, oh, I can't call him. I can't get this. It's a very difficult thing to suffer with, especially when somebody's larger than life. And, what people probably think of your dad, and you're going, no, you didn't know my dad. My dad was like this. And, he's got this legacy, and you have your own legacy of how you feel. What do you miss most about him not being there? I miss my dad's advice he would give me. But what do you miss most?
I would say the same, actually. I love conferring with him and processing stuff with him, particularly about my career, and sharing stories with him. He was easily entertained, my dad. And the fact of the matter is, the weird thing is, Jeff, I hear him all the time. His voice is so distinctive. It's so kind of like, it's everywhere. I mean, I watch Star Trek. I hear him. I hear him in my head all the time, telling me what to do. I mean, I know intuitively what he would say, and I miss hearing it from him. Face to face, definitely. But the gratitude I have is that he's still very much with me. I mean, I still hear him in my head, and people talk about him, and Spock is everywhere, and Star Trek crops up all the time. I was just watching yesterday this fabulous documentary on Ed Sullivan, and there's a little blurb about Star Trek and Mr. Spock in an Ed Sullivan documentary. I mean, they weren't even on the same network. Sullivan was CBS and Star Trek was on NBC. It's just, and I met somebody last night for the first time, and I was introduced as Adam Nimoy. Oh, are you related? It's. You know what? I mean, that's where my story is a little more unique than most people's, is that my dad is very much alive. His spirit is very much alive. Spock and Leonard still very much resonate with people everywhere, and I'm really grateful for that.
I was reading up on you a little bit, and I was reading about how your recovery and your ex-wife actually instigated your improving your relationship with your father. And going back and saying, listen, maybe I need to have forgiveness. Maybe I need to have understanding. And when I read that, I automatically thought about Notting Hill, where he's talking about, I can't get back with you because you're everywhere. If something goes wrong again, I don't think I'd survive it. And I can't imagine not having a relationship with somebody that was so important. And everywhere I look, I'm reminded of him.
Well, that is the conundrum, the difficulty I had, the challenge that I had is that, and I talk about this in the book, is the fact that sometimes I'd have these horrible knockdown, drag-out fights with my dad, and then I'd go out in the world and there would be Spock everywhere, or I'd go to get my laundry and the guy would see my last name and start waxing eloquently about how Leonard Nimoy and Spock changed his life, and you must be so lucky that he's your dad, and what a great guy, and blah, 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 blah. Can I just have my shirts, please? I just came from his house. And it was not pretty. So give me a freaking break. I had a lot of that to deal with, and there was a time when I was like, I don't want to see any more images of Spock. But, that's just a part of my story, my journey. I acknowledge it. I'm grateful for it because everything turned around. And now when I see Spock, I just feel warm and fuzzy inside, So, yeah, that's part of the challenge of having difficulties with a parent who is so visual, so out there, so obvious. That is the weird part of being the son of Leonard Nimoy and having that experience. But, it's all turned around, and now it's a great experience, and I'm still enjoying it.
Now you've come past a lot of these issues. You've burned past them. You're doing what you need to do. There are people out there who are suffering. They don't have a relationship with their dad. They can't forgive him. They can't do these things. What would be the best piece of advice you give to somebody, to give a child who's trying to get over issues they have with their parents? What do you think the most important thing you could tell them?
Well, I tell people all the time, they should just get into recovery. 12-step recovery is just to help people deal with life on life's terms. You don't have to be an alcoholic or an addict to be in recovery. Everybody is recovering from something, whether it's a failed relationship, a failed marriage, the loss of a loved one, a failed career, which happened with me, a physical infirmity that people are trying to recover from. Everybody's got some kind of recovery that they need to be engaged in. You can go to Al-Anon, 12-step meetings. You don't have to be sober to get into 12-step recovery. I'm just saying that for me, it worked. The tools of recovery have been very helpful to me to get through my life. This is why I have been practicing these principles one step at a time, one day at a time for the past 21 years. I never thought I would be sober for 20 plus years. That was never the part of the plan. But I just find that they're a really great way for me to help me deal with some of these issues and, and just really get stuff out of the way and get over resentments and accept people for who they are. Accepting my dad was a big part of my process. It doesn't mean approval. He did a lot of stuff that I don't approve of. but I accepted him for who he was. And he finally came around and did the same for me. It's just a way of learning how to love and be loved by people. And we don't have time for the other stuff, and in this day and age, frankly, with so much, disparity in the political dialogue and the polarization, I think we need recovery now more than ever. That's just what I'm trying to help people understand. It worked for me. I'm hoping it works for other people.
Now, I have brothers, I have family members who are recovering from their different issues. And, people always ask me, they go, what do you think causes it? And I said, listen, it's DNA, it's experience, it's a lot of things. Now, you've had to go through this recovery and you're still going through until the day you pass. I mean, what do you think the biggest issue you might have had with it, where you're going, I drank because of this, or I smoked because of this?
Well, I mean, there's always reasons, everybody's got their own combination of reasons. I mean, I did it for escapism. I smoked for self-medication. When you start smoking pot in West LA as a teenager, you have instant community. You're with cool people, and you're with groups of people and sharing common experiences. I mean, I was a deadhead for years, and, and using and drinking and enjoying all of that. I mean, there's a bunch of reasons for doing it. I think the most important part of my recovery was learning how to deal with resentment. And that's what a lot of people have to contend with, is being, angry and irritable and discontent and having conflict with other people. I once heard a guy say in a meeting not that long ago that hell to him was other people, is a personality conflict. When you're drinking and using, you're not developing emotionally, and you can't really regulate yourself emotionally. You're not maturing emotionally. And that's what recovery has done for me. It's helping me deal with these issues so that when people piss me off, I can take a moment. I can pause when agitated. I can step back and not react to all this stuff. It just creates a terrible cycle of dysfunction. And that's where, it's really been helpful to me in terms of dealing with learning how to grow up. Because, again, I was drinking and using for so many years that I really wasn't learning how to, interpersonal relationship tools and techniques. I didn't have any of those.
There's a lot to take in when you hear something like that. It's just a lot of information that you're going, well, God, trying to analyze that or trying to figure out what you do with that. And I guess it all comes back to, what we're doing here. We have a book. We're putting this out. As somebody who writes comic books, who's been into sci-fi his whole life and everything else like that, what I don't know about your dad would fill the Grand Canyon. What do you think if a regular fan says to you, hey, I know this, what would surprise me most about your dad?
That's a tough one. I think, the thing that when I talk about this book, I talk about the fact that my dad was a true Renaissance man and a true artist. This is a guy who could do anything. This is a guy who was an actor, writer, producer, director, photographer. This is a guy who had, a real social engagement, social causes, political causes, humanitarian, causes. He inspired a lot of people. My dad could do anything. He could build any piece of furniture. He was a carpenter. He could do anything. On the subject of parenting, challenged. The man was challenged. And that's what most people are surprised to find out. And that's where I come in. That is a big part of my story, is what do I do with this guy? Because I couldn't figure it out as a kid. And as a teenager, I did not know what to do with my father because, he's all of these things. He's very inspirational. I was always proud of him. And I make that clear in the book. Always. But what do I do with a guy I can't relate to and sometimes doesn't treat me very nicely? What am I supposed to do with this guy? So, this is where recovery came in for me. That was the answer. Most people are a little surprised to find out that Leonard had trouble playing the role of a loving and caring and patient and tolerant parent. this is where my mother comes in. My sister and I were very lucky to have that with my mother. So I think that's the most surprising thing that people learn. But I try to share that experience without judging him, without pointing a finger, without blaming him. I mean, I'm very careful to point out that my dad didn't have great modeling from his parents, number one. And number two, when he came to LA, his priority was not family. He had a family. His priority was supporting that family and pursuing his career. This all changed later on in life. So, I take the edge off of that by saying that, look, I'm not blaming him, but this is what it was like. And it was it was difficult for me.
Oh, Adam, I can't tell you how much I've loved this interview. Your book, The Most Human, is out there already. Everyone can get it on every platform. And I can't believe I'm going to do this, but I've done like hundreds of interviews, but this is probably the only way I've ever ended an interview ever. Adam, live long and prosper. That's all I got to say.
Jeff, as always, live long and prosper.
Take care.